In this lecture, I will go through what is descriptive and inferential statistic and what are the basic of inferential statistic, about the hypothesis testing and parametric and non-parametric test. First, in my previous lecture also I explained you there are two type of statistical analysis, descriptive and inferential statistic. In this lecture, I'm going to focus on inferential statistic. Before that, I will summarize what difference between descriptive and inferential statistic. In descriptive statistic, always you try to describe your data by summarizing or simplify, or you try to present your data using mean, mode, percentage, or graphs or charts. But it's limited to your sample. But if you want to talk about your population, you need to go for inferential statistic. Normally, we use inferential statistic to make predictions about your population using the parameters in your sample. In simply, you try to generalize the results of your sample to population in inferential statistic. Also, you use inferential statistic to test hypothesis. Also, if you want to find any relationship between variables, you go for inferential statistics. So let me explain deeply what is inferential statistic. Inference means the process of drawing conclusions about population parameters based on sample taken from the population. That means inference means you try to generalize or compare your results of your sample to the population. So in simply we call that word infer. So that is how word inferential statistic come. In inferential statistic, normally they are concerned with making inferences based on relations found in samples to relations in population. So other than the generalizing the results, normally if we want to find any relationship among variables in your samples, we use this inferential statistic. Also, it helps to decide whether the difference between groups that we see in our data is strong enough to provide support for hypothesis that group difference exists in general in the entire population. The mean of this is if you want to find whether there is any differences between two groups or among means, you use inferential statistic. This is the basis of inferential statistic. Clearly keep in mind, in inferential statistics, we always try to draw conclusions about your population using the sample results. These are some very important parameters. Normally, this is parameters. These are the parameters of sample. Normally, parameters of sample we call sample mean and sample proportion or probability of the sample. X bar. For the sample mean, we use S bar, and for the proportion, sample proportion, we use P hat. And when generalizing these results to the population, we use population means the symbol for is mu, this symbol, and the population proportion or probability of the population proportion we take as P. So just keep in mind the names of these parameters that will be useful in the upcoming lectures. First, let me explain you what is sample. From this picture, it's very clear. The sample is a very large area. Sorry, population is a very large area, but sample is a very small area. Normally, we draw sample from a population. In a sample, very small amount of participant is included. So you can see here also this picture, the large picture is with many color balls, and I have drawn a few color balls to this. So I call this is a sample. Normally, sample represent the cross section of a population. I have given examples here also. First example is this is apple orchard or apple garden. So someone want to take a sample of this from this apple garden, and he want to check he or she want to check the mean weight of this apple. So anyone can take a sample from this garden in this way. The population we call apple orchard. The population is this apple garden, and the sample is this So here he has taken 30 apples from the apple locust. So this is the sample. Other thing is a chocolate making factory. So they are also the all the chocolates made by the factory are the population, and the sample is the one person has selected 40 chocolate bars from this whole chocolates. So this is how I can explain you what is a sample and what is population and what is a sample. That keep these pictures in your mind, then you can differentiate difference between population and the sample. Normally, I at the beginning of the lecture also I explain you. We always try to infer sample results to the population. That means the results we obtain from our sample, we try to compare those things with our population. For example, here this the mean weight of one apple of this sample is 149 gram. So we can conclude this way: the population mean also will be or is about 149 grams. So we can't exactly say the mean weight of one apple of this apple garden is 149 gram, but it is about 149 gram. So that is how we infer our results, right? Infer or generalize our sample results to a population. There are three main ideas underlying inference. Normally, first one is a sample like to be a good representation of a population. Second one is that there is an element of uncertainty as to how well the sample represents the population. Third one is the way the sample is taken matters. Let's talk one by one. First one is a sample is like to be a good representation of a population. Normally, always when you conducting research, you need to concern about when you selecting a sample, because always you need to concern the your sample should consist credible or valid number of participants from your population. For example, in this picture, this is an think this is the apple garden, and this is a sample that has been taken. So always you when you doing sampling, you need to take enough sample to represent your population. In upcoming lectures, you will I think already you may have undergone lecture on sampling methods, how you are going to do a sampling. I just want to explain you. Normally inference depend on sample size, right? So in that case, you need to take proper sample for your research from the population. Second one is there is an element of uncertainty as to how well the sample represents the population. Always we can't tell that the sample we obtain can represent the results of population clearly and accurately. So there will be an error. Normally, a sample never be a perfect representation of a population drone. Always, won't be a perfect representation. We just do around calculation, right? So this leads to a sampling error. Normally, there is a simple error. From this picture, you can get a clear idea. Normally, this is a normal distribution. In this picture, you can see there is a error. 3 plus positive and 3 plus minus. Normally, always there will we can expect an error. Normally, we can't say all the results we obtain from the sample can be clearly matched to the population. There will be a error, or there will be a range of error from minus 3 to plus 3 plus. That is an example only. So in that case, you need to consider about the sampling error also. And the third one is the way sample is taken matter. That is why in your research methodology you need to include how you have obtained your sample. What is your sampling method? Whether it is simple, random, cluster, stratified, systematic, or whatever the sampling method, it must be a very accurate one. So if you these three steps are deep points are very essential when you talk about inferential statistics, right? Keep in mind, a sample is like to be a good representation of population. The sample size is very important, and the uncertainty. Always we can't say exactly the sample results will match to the population, but we can do around calculation. And the third one is the way you take your sample. So you need to have good idea about sampling also. And there are three forms of inferential statistics: point estimation, interval estimation, and hypothesis testing. Let's see what is point estimation. In point estimation, we estimate an unknown parameter using a single number that is calculated from the sample data. For example, height example. Let's take in this example, normally we are interested in estimating true average height. Average, one similar meaning, synonym for average is mean. A true average height of the student population at Penn State or somewhere. So we need to find out what is the true average height of a student in selected population. So we collect a sample. We take sample from that population. The random sampling has been done, and there are 54 students in the sample. So here is and after obtaining those results, here the researcher has made a graph. So in this graph, you can see this is a normal distribution, and here midpoint is here. I think this picture must be clear to you. I will read if you can't see clearly. Here the mean value of this summary for height chart is 66.46. And this 95, this is 95% confidence intervals, lies between 95 confidence intervals. Just forget about the confidence interval, just focused on the mean value. The mean value lies between here, it is 66.463. So in this way we can conclude it. The parameter of interest is the population mean height. Normally the parameter we are trying to find out in the population is the mean. We want to find the mean of the population, the mu, and we have obtained a sample from that population. So we can find out the mean of that sample, which is in the sample I told you it is 66.43. So uh, from here we can do inferencing, or we can generalize this result that the uh, mean height of a student is in this sample is 66.43. That is, we can predict that in population also there will, the mean parameter E will be 66.43. So that is the sample mean is the best point estimator in this example. Normally point estimator is a one parameter. Here we take population mean as the parameter. And interval estimation. Interval estimation is we estimate an unknown parameter using an interval of values that is likely to contain the true value of that parameter. Normally, interval estimation is like a range. There is a range, upper limit and lower limit. You can take example this way. The based on sample results, we are 95 confidence that P is the proportion of probability of all US adults who smoke lies between probability of 0.57 to 0.63. If someone can calculate it and say the probability of adults who smoke in US is 0.5, then that value should lie between the 0.57 to 0.63. Now interval estimation is a range. We use two options here: upper limit and lower limit. One example is confidence interval for the interval estimation. In my next lecture, we will go for confidence interval. In there, I will explain you very clearly more. And here, simply I explain you what is confidence interval. It is a range of values that with specified degrees of probability is thought to contain a population value. They contain lower and upper limit. The researcher asserts with some degree of confidence that the population parameter lies within those boundaries. For example, in this big picture, here let's think this is the mean value of this one population. It is 23. So I told you that always there will be an error. So that is we call margin error. Here the margin error is 1.5. It will be minus or plus, right? So here this symbol is mean of the population, and S bar is mean of the sample. E is margin error, right? So here you can conclude this way: the mean of the population lies between 21.5 to 24.5. That is you are 95% confidence that the mean of population or 23 lies between 21.5 to 24.5. That is how you are going to interpret your confidence interval. Just keep your mind, confidence interval is a range. Always there is upper limit and lower limit. And third one is hypothesis testing. This is very important topic when you go for your statistical test. A statistical hypothesis is an assumption about a population which may or may not be true. In hypothesis, always you try to claim about a population. In hypothesis testing is a set of formal procedures used by statistician to either accept or reject statistical hypothesis. Normally, there is always two forms, null or alternative. In statistical hypothesis, there are two types: null hypothesis and alternative hypothesis. Always in null hypothesis, we write the negative claim, and the opposite of that is alternative hypothesis. I will give you a few examples. One example is, take this way: suppose we want to check whether a coin was fair and balanced. If you take an coins, you someone want to tell that it is very fair and very balanced coin. So we want to anyone can just say, but we need to prove it. In proving, you need to develop hypothesis, and you need to prove that hypothesis. So always hypothesis, I explain you, there are two forms: null hypothesis and alternative hypothesis. Here the null hypothesis might say that half flips will be head and half flips will tail. Half of coins that are obtained will be head and half will be tail. So that will be the hypothesis, whereas alternative hypothesis might say that flips of heads and tails may be very different. So you can say alternative hypothesis, the probability, using the probability, the first null hypothesis is here the head, the chance of obtaining head will or tail will be 0.5. The opposite always will be the alternative hypothesis will be opposite of this. So this is the probability will not be equal to 0.5, right? For example, similar to this, someone has flipped a coin 50 times, in which he has obtained 40 heads and 10 tails. So all the 50 times he has obtained 40 heads and 10 tails, not the halves. It is more than half. So that means we can't go for null hypothesis. We have to reject null hypothesis, and we have to go for this one. The probability is flipping and obtaining heads or tail is not equal to half. So you can see here also, in 50 times he has obtained head 40 times and tails 10. So it is difference, not half. If you want to take half, so 20 there should be 25 of heads and 25 tails, right? So there is 40 heads and 10 tails. So that is how you are going to interpret your results. And in testing hypothesis, you need to follow these steps. Always you need to write first null hypothesis related to your subject. First step is you have to state the research hypothesis, both null and alternative, uh, and choose the appropriate statistical test. After you write your hypothesis, you need to check what type of statistical that I am going to use. So in our upcoming lectures, we will see how you are going to how you are going to find your appropriate test, right? And second one is decide on level of significance. So level of significance, in my next slide I will explain you what is level of significance. Next thing is you need to decide the test, whether it is one tailed or two tailed. That one also will be, I will be discussed in upcoming lectures. And second, and next, calculate the test statistic, the value for your test. After you obtain your values, you need to check how, whether you want to reject or accept your null hypothesis. After that you can conclude or prove your hypothesis, right? I think this is not that much clear, but after end of this lecture it will be clear to you. I will repeat this once again later. For example, someone wants to claim that among drivers 18 to 23 years of age, there is no relationship between drunk driving and gender. So, one researcher want to find out whether there is any relationship between drinking and the gender uh, among the sample taken of this age, 18 to 23 years of drivers. So you have to develop hypothesis. You can develop null and alternative hypothesis for this solve. For example, we can say for null hypothesis for this is there is no relationship between drinking and the gender, and the alternative hypothesis for is there is relationship between drinking and the gender. So you have to check this one using proper statistical test, right? The second one is the roadside survey collected data from a random sample of 5,000 drivers and recorded their gender, whether they were drunken. So from this also you can develop hypothesis as I explained first one. Um, so let's move to what is level of significance. Normally level of significance is a probability of a rejecting null hypothesis when it is true and it should not be rejected. Normally level of significance we call it is alpha value also. Alpha, that is a symbol. Most common level of significance is 0.045. I think this is very familiar value for you. If you have already, I think all of your master level students, you have undergone your basic degree and basic research. So from that almost you have come across this significance value. So the most common significance value, it is a probability value, 0.05. For example, a researcher is willing to risk being wrong 5% of time or 5 times out of 100 when rejecting the null hypothesis. That is how we interpret this 0.05 significant. Someone is risk of being wrong, he can be 5% times of risk of being wrong, only 5% chance, right? And there is another significant level you can obtain 0.011 or even at 0.001. This is 1%, or you can say 1%, 5%. This is very low compared to 5%. Normally in our health research, we use both two significance levels, 0.05 or 0.01. I think you get a clear idea about what is significance level. This is I'm just simply explaining. I'm not going to go deep. Just keep simple way in your mind. Once again, in significant level. Normally, if our test is significant, we can reject our null hypothesis and accept our alternative experimental hypothesis. Always, if your significant value significant value you obtain, always you have to obtain one significant value, whether it is 0.05 or 0.001. You have to first obtain that value. If our test significant, the value that you obtain from your sample size is less than your compare significant value, you can reject that null hypothesis and you can go for your alternative hypothesis. If our test is not significant, that means if your test value is higher than your significant value, you can't reject your hypothesis, your null hypothesis. That means you have to accept your null hypothesis. So that is how you are going to reject or accept your hypothesis, null hypothesis. So I think it is clear what is significance level and significance. How significance is always a probability. Normally, clearly it is the we explain is this way. It is 5% chance or 1% chance of being wrong or being wrong. So there is, I told you, there is always there is a chance of getting errors when you sampling. So that is why we have to use significance level, right? In inferential test, which test to use depends on number of factors. After you write your hypothesis, you have to decide what type of inferential test that you are going to use for testing this hypothesis. That depend on the type of your data. I explained you in my first lecture also, the first day. There are measures of variables, nominal, categorical, right? And the type of research designing, what type of research designing, whether it is descriptive or correlation study, that way, and one tail or two tail. I will explain one tail, not what is one tail and what is two tail when I'm talking about, when I'm talking in t-test, right? Uh, the next words that you need to keep your mind is parametric and non-parametric. The normally inferential statistic we can divide into two types once again, parametric and non-parametric. Normally, to make generalization your population from the sample statistic test are used. I told you at the beginning also, there are in statistical analysis there is two types, descriptive and inferential. Once again we can divide it into this way, parametric and non-parametric. And normally, statistical is a formal technique that lies on probability distribution for reaching the conclusion concerning the reasonable of hypothesis. Normally, always all the tests, inferential tests should lie between normal, should have normal distribution, right? But in some case, your data won't have normal distribution. It will have it will skip, right, from the normal value. In that case, we have to go for parametric and non-parametric test. Normally, the parametric test is one which has information about the population parameter. On the other hand, the non-parametric test is one where the researcher has no idea regarding the population parameter. Let me give you clear picture about this parametric was non-parametric. Normally, in parametric test, we applied when the distribution is normal. Normally, I told you normal distribution or bell-shaped distribution. In parametric test, always if you go for parametric test, your data should be normally distributed, right? But in non-parametric, your data never be distributed normal way. It is skews from the your mean value, right? Also, in parametric test, your data should be quantitative, but in non-parametric test, your data are always qualitative. In parametric test, you can apply it when scale of measurement is metric scale, metric interval or ratio. For example, mean. If you want to test mean, you can go for parametric test. But in non-parametric test, we use if there are nominal or ordinal scale data. For example, if you are going to test median, we use non-parametric test, right? Also, other thing is the test of this parametric test is very powerful compared to non-parametric test. Uh, I think this is very clear to you. Only thing you need to keep your mind in from this slide is we use parametric test always if your data behave normally or normal distribution. In non-parametric, if your data don't behave normal way, we go for non-parametric test. So this picture I will explain what are non-parametric and parametric tests that we are using. We use to test our hypothesis, right? Parametric test. There are if you have one sample in your research, we go for t-test, Z test. If you have two samples, we go for independent samples like two group test, Z test, pair t-test. All are t-test, parametric test. And in non-parametric test, if your data don't behave normal distributed way, we go for non-parametric. And if your sample is one sample, we use chi-square, binomial or anything we can run. And if you have two sample, we can go for Mann-Whitney, Sine, Wilcoxon, or Chi-square. All these tests. These are just keep the names of these tests. What are parametric and non-parametric tests? Here, once again, I will summarize what is non-parametric test and non-parametric test. Here, the parametric test, one sample t-test. If your data behave normally, normal distributed way, you can go for one sample t-test. If your data don't behave normal way, you have to go for Wilcoxon test. If you have two sample, you have to use two sample t-test. If your data don't behave normal way, you have to go for non-parametric, non-Mann-Whitney test. So I think you have already undergone or you have already familiar with these names, but I know none of you have not familiar with the non-parametric test. In near future, we will learn about this non-parametric test also. Right? This is a summary of this lecture. The comparison of parametric and non-parametrics. Always, if you want to find the difference between two means of two independent groups, you have to go for t-test. And the non-parametric test we use for this is Mann-Whitney test. That way, I will explain in my next slides, but just keep in mind always parametric and non-parametric test we divide it according to the distribution. If you have normal, if your data set have normal distribution, you have to go for parametric tests. And if your data don't behave normally, you have to go for non-parametric tests. That is the basic thing that you need to keep in mind. Right, so that this is the end of this lecture. If you have any question, please ask. This is only an introduction to inferential statistics. If you have any questions regarding any topics, please ask now. If you don't have, I can move to next lecture.
Hello, Miss Chaturani. Hello.
Oh, Himali Miss.
Then when we are writing about the methodology or the study design, so the change, no, according to the type that we are using to analyze data.
Yes. Yes. Sorry, I can you repeat the question? I can't hear clearly, Himali Miss.
Okay. Normally, I just wrote as my research design as descriptive research study, but I am checking for these hypotheses now. So,
Yes.
is there any changing of methodology?
Yes, you need to change because in descriptive statistic, only you are going to state the summary of your data. Yeah,
Yes,
using
okay.
sample means percentage. But if you are going to find any relationship, if you are going to test and do any test, you have to write if you are using inferential statistic also there. You have to mention you are going for inferential statistic also. You have to edit that one. You have to add. Then you are going to find inferential statistic also. So that will be any. If are you going to find any relationship between relations between someone? So you have to write it this way. Then you have to write this way. Your decide will be descriptive and correlation study.
Okay. Descriptive and correlation
study, right? So you have to include that part also.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Okay. So any other questions? I think your silence means that means two things. You understood the lecture or you didn't understood anything. Anyway, I will go for my next lecture. If you have any question, ask. You can ask. Okay, my next lecture is very short lecture. It is confidence interval. I told you that in inferential statistics, you need to be aware of confidence interval because always there is an error when you are conducting your sampling. When you are doing sampling, there will an error will be occur. So to avoid that, we use confidence interval. Uh, I think now you can see the lecture. This will be a very short lecture on confidence interval. A confidence interval is a range. I in my previous lecture also I explained you interval is a range value that encodes parameter with a given likelihood. For example, there is upper limit and lower limit. So let's say we have sample of 200 people from a population of 100,000. Our sample data come up with a correlation of 0.41. In this example, researcher want to check has obtained one value. It is correlation of 0.41. So he want to indicate that that the 95% confidence interval for this correlation runs from 0.29 to 0.52. So you can see this value 0.41 is within this interval, right? Within this 0.29 to 0.52. So that is how we are explaining confidence interval. In always in confidence interval, there is both lower limit and upper limit. So your data should, the value you obtain from your results should lie within these two values, right? This means that the range value minus 0.29 to 0.52 has 95% of likelihood or 95% of chance of enclosing the parameter, the correlation for entire population that we have like to know. In clearly, the researcher says that the value he obtained, the 0.49, lies between his 95% of confidence that his value of 0.41 lies between 0.29 to 0.52, right? So basically, a confidence interval tells us how much our sample correlation is likely to differ from population correlation we are after. Example, in a smallest Canary Island. This is an island. Just forget about the name. One island, and there are 877 inhabitants or population of 80 years or over. Right, more than 80 years or over people. There are 800,077. A scientist want to know their average yearly income. He want to check their yearly income of this population. So he has taken a sample of 100 from this population, right? So the table below presents the findings. So he has done calculation using SPSS or any kind of statistical software. So this is the outputs. There is a sample size and the minimum income and maximum income. So the mean value of the income of this 100 sample is 20,841. So there is he has obtained 95% confidence interval. So this is lower limit and upper limit. So yeah, the lower limit is 25,630. Upper limit or upper bound is 37 and 52. Based on these 100 people, he concludes that the average yearly income of all the population that he has obtained is probably lies between $25,630 to $32,052. So that is how you are going to interpret your confidence interval always, right? So he has obtained the 100 participants from this population, and he has entered data into any statistical software, and finally he has received this output. So finally he need to infer your results to a population. He want to tell that the results he obtained from his sample to his population, right? So this is the how he is going to interpret his results. So he can conclude that the average yearly income for all the population inhabitants is probably lie between these two values. He's not telling lies only one value. He want to say it lies between or two values, right? Always in confidence intervals you have to use both upper limit and lower limit. Normally there are three type of normally common confidence interval: 90%, 95%, 99%, right? This one also another example for the 95% confidence interval. In confidence intervals, normally this is the calculator hand calculation formula that we are using when you do hand calculation to calculate the confidence interval. This is the S bar here is sample mean. Z is a critical value. Z score the appropriate confidence coefficients for confidence interval of the mean, and alpha is the sigma is the standard deviation, and it has been divided by the root of n is the sample size, right? I will give you example in this lecture. Normally, sorry, this is not he, this must be the level of confidence determines the Z critical value. Normally, if 99% means the Z critical value is 2.58, and 95% confidence mean the critical value you need to use is 1.96. 90%, if you use 90% confidence interval, you have to go for 1.645 critical value as Z value. For example, here confidence coefficient for 99% confidence interval, right? From the standard normal distribution. So this is a normal distribution curve. Your data is behaving this way, and he is using 99% of confidence interval for this one. I told you for the 99% confidence, always the critical value is 2.58. Here it is close to this value. And if you take 95% confidence, you can write this way. Always I told you there is lower limit and upper limit, right? The critical value confidence coefficient is 1.96 minus and 1.96 plus positive value from 0 to. So this is normal distributed curve. If you take 90%, the interval lies, critical value lies between minus 1.65 to 1.64. So this is I will explain you how you are going to calculate your confidence interval if you do hand calculation without using any software, right? The standard error represents the standard deviation, the standard error. This part is we call standard error or margin error. This is critical value. This is the mean of your sample that you have obtained. If you want to find out confidence interval that which your confidence interval for your population, you have to use this formula. But normally, just keep in mind, normally you don't do hand calculation. If you run your testing this statistical softwares, normally you only thing you have to give is confidence level. If you enter your confidence level, whether it is 95%, 90%, 99, automatically it will generate your confidence interval, right? And condition for confidence interval for population mean. Normally, these conditions should be completed if you go for your confidence interval, right? Some condition need to satisfy to use above formula and build confidence interval. In fact, since the method of is based on it follows the same condition for confidence limits, right? These are normally your data should be independent. Normally, the sample observation must be independent. Always your data should behave independently, and your selection should be sample selection should be random. If sampling without replacement, you can do sampling with replacement or without replacement. And the sample size, if your sample size is very small, less than 30, you have to use t value, not the z value. if the sample is less than 30, you have to use t distribution, not the z distribution. For example, we call this is an z distribution. If your sample is more than 30, we can use this distribution. If your sample size is very small, less than 30, you have to go for t distribution. Example, let's see how you are going to calculate confidence interval when you do hand calculation. A random sample of 225 first year statistic tutorial was selected from the past 5 years, and the numbers of students absent from each one recorded. The results were equal to 11.6 and is 4.1 absence. Estimate the mean number of absence for tutorial over the past 5 years with 95% confidence. So he is going to find out a 95% confidence level. So this is how we write that way. So he is 90% confidence and 10% is not confidence. So error will be this part. So the critical value we use 90% is 1.645 minus 2 plus, right? So calculation is this. So S bar 1.65645. So and sigma divided by root of n. Normally 11.6. I told you S bar is 11.6 here, and 4.1 is the sigma standard deviation, and the sample size is 225. After the calculation, you get a value lies between 11.5 plus or minus 0.45. So lower limit and upper limit, you can get 11.15 is lower confidence interval, and upper confidence interval is 11.45. So you can conclude that this way. Suppose we took many samples this way. Suppose we took many samples to build the confidence interval from each sample using the above equation. The 95% of those interval would contain actual mean of mu. That means the population mean can be 90%, 95% of your confidence that the population mean will be included between those two range. This is the correct interpretation of confidence interval. Normally, the result that you obtain from the previous sample, for example, you can say it this way. It is incorrect to say that there is probability of 0.9 that your population parameter population mean is between 11.15 and 12.05. But you can't actually, you have to say this way. Normally, your population parameter or your population means lies between the upper limit and lower limit of 11.515 to 12.05. Right? Always you have to calculate confidence intervals using your sample values. Right? You have sample mean. Then you can compare those results with your population. So you can tell the population mean lies between these two range. Right? So always when you do hand calculation, you have to use this formula. This one. So this is another example. I'm not going to explain it once again. You can go through the slide. Normally, just keep in mind. Normally, we don't do hand calculation. Normally, you can run the test in the SPSS or any other statistical software. Automatically, you have to it generates confidence interval. Only thing you have to include is this thing. The what is your confidence level, whether it is 99, 95% or 90%. So I told you this is a very short lecture. Just keep in mind what is the mean of confidence interval, what are the levels of confidence intervals. Okay, so if you have any question, please ask. Is that clear? Hello?
Hello, I ask questions no all the time.
Yeah, it's okay.
Nadisha, that 90, 95 and 98, it is the accuracy, right? If it is 98, it is more accurate. Is that?
Yeah. And accurate of your confidence that much. 99% accurate,
Yes.
99% confidence that. Then
Oh.
only 1% of error is there.
Yes.
Right?
Okay.
Normally,
Understood. Yes.
in our lectures, we use 99 or 95%. These two.
Okay.
If you
Okay.
and more clearly, if you use 95% and your significance value we takes as 5%, 0.045, that
Yes.
is great.
Okay. Okay. Thanks.
Okay then.